I heard the whispers before I saw her. Standing at the fragrant counter of my newly opened aromatherapy shop, Essence, I was helping a customer select the perfect essential oil blend when the bell above the door chimed. The whispers followed, immediately, rippling through the small but respectable crowd of opening day customers. That's her, Caroline Turner, Daniel's mother. The real estate mogul? What's she doing here? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I didn't need to look up to know my mother-in-law had made. Her entrance. Caroline Turner never simply entered a room, she commandeered it. The sharp click of designer heels against hardwood floors announced her approach as definitively as a military drum. Rebecca, darling. Her voice carried that unique blend of honey and vinegar that had become so familiar over the 3 years since I'd married her son. What a quaint little shop you've created. I finished packaging my customer's purchase with a warm smile before turning to face Caroline. As always, she was impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than my first month's rent on this space. Her silver-streaked auburn hair was swept into an elegant chignon, not a strand out of place. Caroline, I greeted her evenly. Welcome to Essence. Would you like a tour? Her smile didn't reach her eyes as she surveyed the shop. The handcrafted wooden shelves stocked with artisanal oils and blends, the consultation area with its comfortable chairs and soft lighting, the mixing station where customers could create personalized scents under guidance. That won't be necessary. I was in the neighborhood for a property viewing and thought I'd stop by to see this. She paused, perfectly manicured fingers gesturing vaguely. Hobby shop Daniel's been financing for you. The barb was typical, Caroline. A deliberate mischaracterization, designed to diminish. Daniel hadn't financed Essence. I'd built it with my own savings from 5 years as an aromatherapist at the city's top spas, plus a small business loan I'd secured independently. Actually, Daniel hasn't contributed financially to Essence, I corrected her calmly. This is my venture entirely. A customer nearby, Eliza, the owner of the popular cafe down the street, gave me a subtle thumbs up. Caroline noticed the gesture, and her smile tightened further. How independent of you. She picked up one of my signature sleep aid blends, examining the label with obvious skepticism, though I'm surprised the bank approved a loan for something so niche. Essential oils are quite the passing trend, aren't they? Before I could respond, the door chimed again and Daniel entered, his expression brightening when he spotted me but quickly shifting to surprise at seeing his mother. Mom, I didn't know you were coming to the opening. He crossed the shop, placing a supportive arm around my waist while kissing his mother's cheek. Impromptu visit, she replied smoothly. I was nearby reviewing the West Side property and realized I hadn't seen Rebecca's little shop yet. Daniel, bless him, immediately corrected her characterization. It's hardly little, Mom. Becca's been working toward this for years. Did you see the press she got in the Wellness Monthly? They're calling Essence the most innovative aromatherapy concept in the city. I loved him for the defense, but I could see the storm gathering in Caroline's eyes. She'd never approved of me, the aromatherapist who'd seduced her son away from the corporate lawyer she'd selected for him. In Caroline's world, success was measured in square footage of real estate owned and influence wielded. My holistic approach to business offended her sensibilities. Yes, well, press is easy to get with the right connections, she remarked dismissively. Maintaining a profitable business is the real challenge. I understand this part of town has seen quite a few small business failures in the past year alone. There it was, the first warning shot. As a real estate developer who owned half the commercial properties in this area, Caroline would know exactly which businesses had failed and why. Her tone carried an unmistakable note of prophecy. Daniel frowned slightly. Mom, it's a legitimate concern, I interrupted, meeting Caroline's gaze directly. Which is why I researched extensively before choosing this location and developing my business plan. Would you like to know the projected break-even point? Or perhaps the market differentiation strategy I've implemented? Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that I was willing to engage on her terms. Caroline Turner was accustomed to people cowering before her reputation and wealth. Another time, perhaps, she said, glancing at her watch. I have a meeting with the zoning committee in 30 minutes. Daniel, walk me out? As they stepped away, I returned to helping customers, but kept one eye on their conversation outside the shop window. Caroline's animated gestures and Daniel's increasingly tense posture told me all I needed to know. She was sharing her concerns about my business venture, no doubt suggesting it was doomed to fail. When Daniel returned, his expression was troubled. She's just worried, he explained half-heartedly. You know how she is about financial security. I did know. Caroline had grown up poor before building her real estate empire through ruthless determination and strategic marriages. She viewed my independence as both a curiosity and a threat to her son's Turner legacy. It's fine, I assured him, though we both knew it wasn't. The shop's doing well. First-day sales are already exceeding projections. He brightened at this news, but a seed of worry had been planted. Caroline Turner never made empty threats, and her concern about businesses failing in this area carried ominous undertones. I would learn exactly how ominous 3 weeks later, when Eliza from the cafe burst into Essence during a slow afternoon, her usually cheerful face flushed with anger. Have you seen this? She thrust a formal letter toward me. Everyone on the block got one. The letterhead was instantly recognizable. Turner Properties. My heart sank as I read the notice informing all tenants that the entire block had been acquired by Turner Development Group and would be undergoing significant renovations starting next quarter. Rent would increase by 40% to reflect the enhanced property values following improvements. She can't do this, Eliza fumed. Most of us are on fixed leases. I scanned the fine print and found exactly what I expected. A clause referencing the original leasing agreement that most small business owners had signed without scrutinizing. Caroline had apparently purchased the entire block from the previous landlord, who had cleverly included a provision allowing for rent adjustments in the event of property transfer or significant improvements. She can, I said quietly. She found a loophole. Eliza collapsed into one of my consultation chairs. This will put me out of business, Becca. I can't afford a 40% increase, not with the margins I'm running now. The realization dawned cold and clear. This wasn't about business strategy for Caroline. This was personal. She was systematically destroying the small business community that surrounded Essence, creating a commercial desert that would inevitably starve my shop of the foot traffic it needed to survive. I couldn't prove it was targeted at me specifically, but the timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Caroline hadn't directly attacked my business. She'd simply altered the ecosystem around it to ensure its failure. That evening, I shared the development with Daniel over dinner. His fork clattered against his plate as I explained the situation. That's impossible, he insisted. Mom wouldn't do something like this just to target you. Wouldn't she? I challenged gently. She's made it clear from day one that she thinks Essence is a foolish venture. What better way to prove herself right than to ensure its failure? Daniel pushed away from the table, pacing our small dining room. I'll talk to her. There must be some explanation. Don't, I said firmly. If this is what I think it is, confronting her will only make things worse. She'll deny any personal motivation, and you'll be caught in the middle. He looked at me helplessly. Then what do we do? I took a deep breath. The beginnings of a plan, already forming. I need to think like Caroline. She's playing chess, not checkers. The next morning, I arrived at Essence early and began pulling together financial reports, customer data, and sales projections. If Caroline wanted to wage war, through business tactics, I needed to understand my battlefield completely. By noon, the picture was clear and concerning. While Essence was performing well above initial projections, we weren't yet established enough to weather a significant drop in neighborhood foot traffic. If the surrounding businesses closed or relocated due to the rent increase, my customer flow would likely decrease by at least 30%. I needed allies and I needed information. I started with Eliza, inviting her to Essence after both our shops closed. I'm organizing a meeting of all the affected business owners, I explained over tea infused with calming lavender. Caroline thinks she can pick us off individually. We need to respond collectively. Eliza looked skeptical. What can we possibly do against Turner Properties? She owns half the commercial real estate in this city. Exactly half, I emphasized. Not all. And knowledge is power, especially in real estate. By the end of the week, I had gathered 12 business owners in Essence after hours. The mood was grim but determined as I outlined what I'd discovered through careful research. Caroline Turner's company is overextended, I explained, pointing to the financial reports I'd obtained through public records. She leveraged several properties to purchase this block, including the West Side development she mentioned in my shop. That project is behind schedule and over budget. Marco from the bookstore leaned forward. How does that help us? It means she needs this block to start generating higher revenue quickly, I explained. She can't afford delays or vacancies. Her cash flow won't allow it. But we can't afford the increased rent, protested Sasha from the vintage clothing store. Not individually, I agreed, but collectively, we might have options. Over the next hour, I laid out a strategy that had been forming since I'd seen the notification letter. It was risky and would require complete solidarity, but it might be our only chance. The first phase of our plan began immediately. Each business owner would submit a formal request for negotiation regarding the rent increase, citing specific clauses in their leases. The goal wasn't to win these negotiations, but to delay them as much as legally possible. Meanwhile, I reached out to a contact at the local business journal, a frequent customer who had helped promote Essence's opening, about running a feature on the historic small business district being threatened by corporate development. The story ran the following week, complete with sympathetic profiles of each shop owner and pointed questions about the ethics of dramatic rent increases during an economic recovery period. Phase 2 was more complex and required Daniel's reluctant participation. Though uncomfortable being caught between his mother and me, he agreed that her tactics were unnecessarily aggressive. I need access to information about her West Side project, I explained. Nothing confidential, just enough to understand her timeline and pressure points. Through careful conversations with his colleagues at Turner Properties, Daniel learned that the West Side development was indeed Caroline's vulnerability. She had personally guaranteed a significant loan to secure that property, with projections promising return on investment beginning in the third quarter. Any delay in revenue from her other properties would create a dangerous cash flow problem. Armed with this knowledge, I moved to Phase 3, creating leverage. Working with a commercial real estate attorney who specialized in small business advocacy, our collective drafted a unified response to the rent increase. Rather than fighting the increase directly, we proposed a graduated implementation over 18 months, with specific conditions regarding the promised improvements to the block. The masterstroke, however, came from an unexpected ally. Daniel's father, Richard Turner, Caroline's first husband and still a significant shareholder in Turner Properties, reached out after seeing the Business Journal article. Caroline's making a tactical error, he said when we met for coffee at Essence. These strong-arm techniques might have worked 20 years ago, but community goodwill matters in today's market. Richard had maintained a cordial relationship with his ex-wife through their son, but had always kept a professional distance from her business ventures. Now, approaching retirement, he was concerned about the company's reputation. The board meeting. Next week we'll address the West Side project delays, he informed me. If public sentiment about this rent situation turns any more negative, it could affect investor confidence. The implication was clear. Richard was offering a subtle alliance. He couldn't directly oppose Caroline, but he could ensure that the consequences of her actions were fully visible to the board. 2 days later, Caroline Turner pushed through the door of Essence with considerably less poise than during her first visit. The shop was busy with an afternoon workshop, and several participants looked up in surprise at her abrupt entrance. "A word, Rebecca," she demanded, gesturing toward my private consultation room. I excused myself from the workshop and led her to the room, closing the door behind us. "This campaign you're orchestrating stops now," she said without preamble. "The Business Journal article, the coordinated lease negotiations. I know exactly what you're doing." I maintained a calm demeanor, despite my racing heart. "What am I doing, Caroline? Protecting my business? Creating mutual support among neighboring shop owners? These seem like reasonable responses to a 40% rent increase." "Don't play innocent. You've been accessing information about Westside through Daniel." "Daniel and I talk about our work," I acknowledged. "That's what married couples do. But my response to your rent increase is based entirely on public information and legal consultation." Her eyes narrowed. "You've turned Richard against me as well. He's suddenly questioning development strategies he's ignored for years." This was news to me. Richard must have been more concerned than he'd let on during our meeting. "I haven't turned anyone against you, Caroline. I'm simply defending my business using the tools available to me." "By undermining mine?" she challenged. "Is that what you think I'm doing? Because from where I stand, you made the first aggressive move by targeting the business community surrounding Essence." For a moment, genuine surprise flickered across her face. "You think I bought this entire block? Just to sabotage your little oil shop? Didn't you?" I countered. "The timing is suspiciously convenient." Caroline laughed, though the sound lacked humor. "Your sense of self-importance is remarkable. I've been negotiating for this block for over 8 months. It's part of a larger development strategy for this quadrant of the city." I wasn't entirely convinced, but her reaction seemed genuine. "Perhaps. But the aggressive rent increase immediately following my shop's opening certainly created that impression." She waved a dismissive hand. "Business is business. The rents in this area have been under market value for years. And the small business community has thrived because of it," I pointed out. "A community that benefits Essence, just as Essence benefits them. We're an ecosystem, Caroline." Something shifted in her expression, not softening exactly, but recalculating. Caroline Turner hadn't built her empire by being inflexible when new information presented itself. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked after a moment. I outlined the graduated rent increase proposal our collective had developed, emphasizing how it would maintain full occupancy while still achieving her desired revenue targets over a slightly extended timeline. "In addition," I continued, "I've developed a community marketing initiative that would increase foot traffic throughout the block by at least 25% within 6 months. Higher customer volumes mean higher sales for all businesses, which supports their ability to pay increased rent." Caroline's eyebrow raised slightly. "And this marketing initiative?" I handed her the proposal I'd prepared, complete with projected costs, implementation timeline, and expected outcomes. "It leverages the unique character of each business to create a destination shopping experience rather than isolated visits." She scanned the document with the sharp focus that had made her successful. I could almost see her calculating potential returns and weighing them against her original strategy. "This is surprisingly comprehensive," she admitted reluctantly. "I'm a businesswoman, Caroline, just like you. My approach may be different, but my commitment to success is just as strong." Our eyes met, and for perhaps the first time, she was seeing me clearly. Not as her son's misguided wife playing at entrepreneurship, but as a strategic thinker with valid insights. "I'll need to review this with my team," she said, tucking the proposal into her expensive leather portfolio. No promises. It wasn't capitulation, but it was an opening. As she turned to leave, I took a calculated risk. You know, Caroline, we could be allies rather than adversaries. Your experience combined with my community-centered approach could create something remarkable in this neighborhood. She paused at the door. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. One negotiation at a time. After she left, I exhaled slowly, realizing I'd been holding my breath. The confrontation had gone better than expected, but Caroline Turner was still a formidable opponent. Whether she would seriously consider our proposal or was simply retreating to develop a new strategy remained to be seen. The answer came 3 days later in the form of a revised notice to all tenants. The rent would indeed increase, but by 20%, initially with 10% increases phased in over the following 2 years, almost exactly matching our proposal. Additionally, the promised renovations would begin with infrastructure improvements rather than cosmetic changes, addressing long-standing issues with plumbing and electrical systems that had plagued the older buildings. Most surprisingly, the notice included an invitation to a Merchants' Council meeting to discuss the community marketing initiative I had proposed. Caroline was not only adopting parts of my strategy but institutionalizing the collaborative approach I had championed. When I shared the development with our business collective, the relief was palpable. While the rent increases would still require adjustments to our business models, the graduated implementation gave everyone time to adapt. More importantly, Caroline's willingness to collaborate on the marketing initiative created a pathway to increased revenue that could offset the higher operating costs. Daniel was equally surprised by his mother's apparent change of heart. I've never seen her compromise on a development strategy before, he confessed as we celebrated with a quiet dinner at home. What exactly did you say to her? I spoke her language, I explained. Business fundamentals, profit projections, strategic partnerships. I showed her that her success and ours could be aligned rather than oppositional. The inaugural Merchants' Council meeting was held in Essence's workshop space, a symbolism that wasn't lost on anyone present. Caroline arrived precisely on time, accompanied by her marketing director and property manager. Before we begin, she announced to the assembled business owners, I want to clarify that Turner Properties remains committed to developing this block to its full potential. However, she glanced briefly in my direction, we recognize that the character and diversity of the existing businesses contribute significantly to that potential. It wasn't an apology. Caroline Turner didn't apologize for business decisions, but it was an acknowledgement of the value we brought to her property. For Caroline, that was revolutionary. The meeting proceeded with surprising productivity. My marketing initiative was adopted as the framework, with each business contributing ideas for cross-promotion and collaborative events. Caroline's marketing team offered resources and connections that would have been beyond our collective reach, while we provided the authentic local perspective that corporate strategies often lacked. As the meeting concluded, Caroline lingered behind. I braced myself for a private rebuke or warning, but instead she offered an unexpected observation. You remind me of myself at your age, she said, surprising us both. Different industry, different approach, but the same tenacity. Coming from Caroline, this was extraordinary praise. I accepted it with a nod. I'll take that as a compliment. As it was intended. She adjusted her designer handbag on her shoulder. Daniel mentioned you're expecting your first child in the fall. The personal topic shift caught me off guard. Yes, in September. Something softened almost imperceptibly in her expression. Children change your perspective on legacy. What you're building here, she gestured around Essence. It's not just about oils and aromas, is it? No, I agreed. It's about creating spaces where people feel better, healthier, more centered. A community resource as much as a business. Caroline nodded thoughtfully. A different kind of development than mine, but development nonetheless. She extended her hand formally. I look forward to our continued collaboration, Rebecca. As we shook hands, I realized we had reached not friendship, certainly not yet, but a mutual respect that had seemed impossible just weeks before. Caroline had tried to ruin my business, whether intentionally or as collateral damage in her larger plans. I had turned the tables not by defeating her, but by creating a new game entirely, one where success was measured in community strength rather than individual dominance. 6 months later, the transformation of our business district was evident. The infrastructure improvements had been completed with minimal disruption, and our collaborative marketing initiative had increased foot traffic by over 35%, exceeding even my optimistic projections. Essence had expanded its workshop offerings and launched a subscription service for custom blends, while Eliza's Cafe now featured a scent-pairing menu developed in partnership with my team. The most surprising development, however, came during a routine ultrasound appointment. Daniel and I had just learned we were having twins when his phone rang with Caroline's distinctive ringtone. "Mother wants to know if we've considered names yet," he reported after the call, his expression bemused. "She's also offering to convert the apartment above the bookstore into a suitable nursery space, adjacent to Essence, so you can maintain appropriate oversight of your business without compromising maternal responsibilities." I laughed in genuine amusement. Caroline Turner, offering childcare solutions. Now I've truly seen everything. She mentioned something about legacy businesses and the importance of second-generation involvement, Daniel added. "I think she's already planning their future. Roles at Turner Properties and Essence combined." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The woman who had very likely attempted to destroy my business was now envisioning its continuation through her grandchildren. Caroline hadn't fundamentally changed. She was still calculating, strategic, and determined to control outcomes. But she had reassessed the value of what I'd built and decided it was worthy of the Turner name after all. As for me, I had learned that sometimes turning the tables doesn't mean defeating your opponent. It means changing the game entirely, finding leverage in unexpected places, and creating partnerships where enmity once flourished. My mother-in-law had tried to ruin my business, but in the end, we had both won something more valuable than either of us had initially sought: a reluctant respect that might, with time and 2 small grandchildren as catalysts, eventually resemble something like family. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.